Hello, everyone, and thank you for listening to this episode of the Refold Podcast, where we talk about all things related to language learning. My name is Clayton, also known as George Pig, and I manage the community here at Refold. Today, our guest is Vanessa. Some of you may recognize her from previous seasons of the podcast. She's a language coach here at Refold and an all-around generalist. Hello, how are you, Vanessa?
Not bad today.
It's been a long time since you've been on the podcast.
Yeah, first time being on camera.
Yeah. And whatever happened to your secret project?
My secret project. I don't know. I have hopes that it'll come back one day, like a phoenix.
All right. Well, I think the community would benefit from your secret project. I wish I could tell you guys what it is, because I know what it is, and I think it's really cool. But if Vanessa wants to keep it a secret, we will keep it a secret. So, Vanessa, on today's episode of Meet the Refold Team, you are the guest of honor. Do you want to give us your origin story?
Oh boy, where do I start? I guess like a lot of people, growing up in the '90s, and getting ready for school in the morning, elementary school, putting your shoes on at like 6 a.m. I don't know, 5 a.m. I don't remember now. Um, and just watching TV and watching Toonami, watching some Sailor Moon, some Dragon
Did
Ball
Toonami
Z.
come on in the morning?
Yeah, they had like an early showing, like super early in the morning, like
I did not
very
have
strange
Cartoon
hours.
Network. We didn't get
Yeah.
it where I'm from. I'm from like the middle of nowhere. So I didn't have Cartoon Network. I always thought Toonami was something that came on after hours.
Yeah, that too. But they had a weird early morning showing of anime stuff.
Toonami morning show. All right. Toonami Rising Sun. Oh, okay. It ran in the mornings.
Yeah.
Okay. Toonami Rising Sun.
Just
I had no clue.
normal elementary school things, being up at 4 in the morning, watching Dragon Ball Z. Doesn't everyone do that?
I bet you had 7-Elevens where you're from too.
Yeah.
All right. So waking up early before school kind of got you into anime. You caught the Toonami Rising Sun, the morning block of Toonami.
Hmm.
And that all? Is that all to your weeb origin story?
Well, that's not all. I guess that was the first taste of anime. Oh, and Pokemon. Uh, I was a Pokemon maniac. Pokemaniac. I think that was the term. uh,
I
yeah.
try to get back into Pokemon, and I can't. The old games did not age well.
I mean, they have their
You have
charm.
you have to level up every Pokemon one by one.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Um,
That was a
there's just a
grind.
whole bunch of the game. I will say the original games have not aged well. They show that they're from the 90s,
Hmm.
and now I remember why. I had like one Pokemon that was like level bajillion, and all the other were like level 5, level
Oh yeah,
6.
you're
And that's
you're
the reason.
you have the obviously favorite child that you have in every battle that's like level 100. Everyone's like level 3. Uh, yeah. So I guess my weeb origin story continued later on. When I was a preteen. Once again, Toonami, Adult Swim, watching it late at night this time. And then Yu Yu Hakusho is on in the rotation.
Yu Yu Hakusho. Okay. In the Philippines, that's called Ghost Detective, I think,
Very
is the
fitting.
English name. All right. So Toonami basically got you into being a weeb, and that's sort of your origin story.
Yeah.
All right. And in addition to Japanese, don't you have family who are Spanish speakers?
I grew up, well, there's a lot of things going on there. Number one, I grew up in Florida with a very massive Spanish speaking population. And then half my family spoke Spanish. Uh, the they're originally, I guess, their origin is from Spain. So Spain Spanish mixed with, I guess, more uh Floridaized Spanish. I'm not really sure how to say it. But it wasn't like a complete Spanish accent with a lisp and everything. Or I guess what people consider a lisp, even though it's not. So don't yell at me. Uh, so yeah, I heard Spanish growing up, like at least half the time, but I don't know. I don't know. I guess it wasn't exotic and foreign enough at that point for me to be interested.
You know, in addition to Spanish, you also had the opportunity for Italian at one point. So
Mhm.
do you wanna tell us a little bit about your Italian background?
Yeah, I guess that one is a little bit regrettable because I was in the Air Force and I lived in Italy. Um, and all of this was before I even knew about Refold. So the thought of watching things in Italian didn't even cross my mind, unfortunately.
Reading some of those
I
Italian picture comics. Have you
uh
seen those? They actually,
no, I
they
actually
make
haven't.
comic books, but out of, photographs. It's, like, a very Italian thing.
Huh.
Yeah.
Well, today I learned. But
So you were stationed in Italy and you didn't learn any Italian.
I
Well, okay, I
tried.
guess that's
I
not true.
tried.
What's your catchphrase? You say something all the time during work meetings, and I forget what it is.
Oh, it was like my survival phrase in Italy because it's all I had to say when I was out. Like I would go to the grocery store, silently say nothing to anyone. And then after paying for my groceries, the person tells me the total, and of course I don't really have to know what they said because it reads out on the thing. I can see the numbers. I just give them my card so I don't have to worry about it. And all I would have to say is, "Grazie, ciao," and just leave because that's all I needed.
And is that the extent of your Italian?
Um, Now it is, but at the time I was making an attempt. I was doing, Babel, so I was learning some phrases. Uh, I can't really remember any now. Goes to show. No immersion, can't remember.
Oh, right. So the Italian 1K deck is, finally about to be released. After,
Soon.
a year, it had a couple of hangups. Are you planning on going back to Italian once the 1K deck drops? Or are you focused on Japanese?
Yeah, realistically not. I think I did have my dabbling phase a little bit, a few months
You did
ago.
Korean a little bit a few
Yeah,
months ago.
yeah, Korean was whispering sweet nothings into my ear, like, "Ps, ps, ps, ps." Um, and, also thinking about Spanish, because I downloaded the ES1K just for funsies, just to
Oh,
see how much I
okay.
could suspend. Um, but yeah,
How
I
much
think
did you
I'm
suspend in the 1K deck?
I don't remember. It was less than 100, almost 100, probably.
You probably would have gotten more, but, our decks remove the cognates, so all those gimme words are not included.
Yeah, I dropped it kinda quickly, can't lie.
I like Spanish. It's a nice language.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
yeah, it's
definitely
nice.
it's fun to refold.
I'm back on focused on Japanese now.
You are focused. Speaking of your Japanese, do you wanna tell us about your Japanese level right now? So, in refold terms, you are 2C, right?
Mhm,
You've been in 2C for a while, and one of the
yeah.
questions I got from the community for you was, "Why are you still in 2C?"
Well, okay, what happened was, I was planning to become the early outputter this year. I was planning to
Do
go
stage
to
3.
yeah, stage 3, but, my priorities got redirected because of work. So now I am studying for JLPT. I'm probably not going to actually take it until next year at the earliest, but I'm going through the materials and studying for it.
And how's that JLPT journey going?
So far, it's fine because I've done N5 and N4. Woohoo! Uh, uh, I feel like N3 is gonna make me sweaty. I'm already sweating thinking about
You don't
N3.
read enough.
Oof. Yeah, no, I don't.
You don't read enough, that's the problem.
Yeah, I'm a listening main.
That is the elixir to all of your ailments with Japanese, it's just to read more.
Yeah, I'm just illiterate. I can't help it. I'm a listening main. Listening gang, shout out.
So you're doing the JLPT and you're doing that for work, and you suspect that you're finally gonna start running into problems with it around in 3.
Yeah, N3 for sure, N2 because my reading is not there. I've been I guess, listening
Mm.
focused almost the whole time I've been doing Japanese because that's just where my interests were. I
It's
enjoy,
easier.
yeah, I enjoy listening media, audiovisual media, and I guess I would rather be a good conversationalist rather than someone who has like a massive vocab for no reason.
And do you want to tell us how you're going about your JLPT study?
So basically, the three ingredients are doing a deck in Anki for the level, doing Boon Pro for the level, and trying to focus more on reading.
So what sort of reading are you doing?
Well, I'm starting with manga because I am a toddler. I need pictures. My reading is not good enough to jump into novels, I don't think. I mean, technically it probably is, but I'm
It
just a scared little
probably is
baby.
fine. Yeah, you probably just don't have a high tolerance for doing a lot of lookups.
Yeah, no, I don't. Free flow for life.
It's really interesting to see how different people in the community and different clients cope with ambiguity, especially when it comes to reading. Um, some people they will get in there with 50% words known, and they'll have like that's basically no word coverage as far as I'm concerned. They will religiously look up every single word, and 12 months later, they're actually kind of good now.
Mhm.
And then you got some people who put it off. They're like, "Oh no, I only have 98% word coverage. I can't cope with this."
Yeah.
Uh, so they're two extremes, and I definitely do not like having a low word coverage. When I read stuff in Spanish or Filipino, after it gets below 95% word coverage, I'm a bit like, too many lookups to be fun for me.
I
So I'm
was
definitely a big
reminded
baby.
how low 80% really is because that website came across again where it's like this is actually what 80% is like, 80% comprehension. Uh
Mhm.
I'm sure you've seen it at some point where it's like he phoned the dingle dangle, like weird nonsense words inserted in some kind of English passage to like give you the sense of what 80% comprehension is actually like. And it's not great. I mean, you can get most of it, but you do miss out on some key words that would tell you what's going on.
Fairly low. It's fairly low.
Mhm.
Most people do not track word coverage, but if you use like an assisted reader like Vocab Sieve or Link, it's pretty easy to be like, okay, I've got 95% word coverage in this book. Let's go for it. Or oh, I've only got 80%. Let's not.
Mhm.
But yeah, it's not much. And
Yeah.
definitely in all languages, comics are just easier, even
Mhm.
outside of Japanese. It's nice because you got the visual context and they're fun. They're pictures.
Mhm. And they're just so good. There's so much of it, kind of like anime.
Now, regarding the JLPT, you also mentioned that you're not just doing pure immersion for it. So a lot of refolders and a lot of immersion learners, they don't actually do any sort of concentrated study. It sounds
Mhm.
to me like you've shifted gears and you're no longer just free flowing anime, but you're also doing grammar study, test prep, you're taking mock tests. So why did that shift come about?
Well, I think it's because it's kind of necessary for my, work assignment, I guess you can call it.
Mhm.
I have been tasked to go through the study materials so that I know what they're like and I can advise clients on them, troubleshoot, give them tips. Like, for one, anybody who is a refolder who wants to transition to using Boon Pro, turn off ghosts because they do the opposite of what you think they would do. It is
They're not like
basically,
leeches.
yeah, yeah. It's like their leech equivalent, but they have the complete opposite mindset around it. Like they try to jam the leeches down your throat and keep you stuck there, and they never progress. And the way we think about leeches is the opposite. It's like, no, get them out of the way so you can learn what you can actually learn right now. So, if you're using Boon Pro, turn off ghosts, reset them, save yourself the headache because they are not good for you.
And how has it been actually like doing explicit test prep stuff that I think you probably never would have done had you not been assigned to do it for work?
No, I probably wouldn't. And I probably would have gone the route that most refolders go of just, immersing your brains out until you're ready to
There
do
are
M1
worse things than being paid to do test prep study.
for sure. I am not
I would it
complaining.
I would love to be paid to study a language in any form.
Hmm.
So how has it been? What surprised you the most switching from sort of this raw listening, heavy anime approach to actually like looking at the explicit grammar and stuff? Were there any surprises? Because I've heard that JLPT N5 and N4 are kind of artificial. Like they have a lot of words that are not super common in immersion. Um, and a lot of immersion learners have big gaps actually, like when it comes to things like random things like numbers and days of the week.
Hmm. Yeah, N5 and N4 are annoying because they can't make up their mind whether they want to write words in kanji or hiragana. They just seem to switch it up arbitrarily whenever they feel like it. Um, so it's very strange to encounter things in a way that you would expect. Like in kanji, you would expect certain words in kanji, and then they just don't. And there are questions where they will just underline a word that's in hiragana and ask you to pick something that matches the meaning of that word. And it's like, how am I supposed to know what this word is if you're writing it in kana? It could be pretty much anything. And it's like so strange. Like it's not difficult in the traditional sense. It's just difficult in terms of like they are ambiguous and you have to just figure out what they want.
Gotta tolerate the ambiguity.
Yeah. Yeah. The grammar is a pain because it is very much here's your math equation, plug in the missing variable, kind of thing. Um, and reading is a pain because I don't read.
You gotta read more.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, that's gonna be like what I'm gonna say every single time. You just gotta read more.
I'm getting bullied by the reading bros now.
You gotta read more. It's the
Yeah.
answer to all of your problems with
Yep.
Japanese.
I know.
Now, are there any tools that you would recommend? So you and Ethan did a whole bunch of research into the JLPT, and you guys have decided on like some mock tests and Bunpro. Um, are there any tools that you would recommend for people who are studying for the JLPT?
For reading, since we're talking about reading, there's the Satori Reader app. Um, like, yes, it's paid, but it does have features that make it a little more fun to read than just staring at an EPUB. I mean, I love free stuff as much as anyone, but if money is not a problem for you and you want to make your reading experience a little more fun, Satori Reader is pretty good.
That you recommend Satori Reader?
Hmm.
How about Bunpro?
Boonpro is kind of cool. It's like a fill in the blank grammar thing, and they do have the grammar explanations for certain things, and a lot of them I do know in N5 and N4. So it's been nice kind of breezing through, and it's actually kind of filled in the gaps for certain things that I kind of had an intuitive sense of what it was, but couldn't really put it in concrete terms. And having it explained in concrete terms and having the example sentences are pretty nice.
So why Bunpro over, I don't know, one of the free decks for grammar that are like on Anki Web?
I don't know. I think Boon Pro has that sort of gamification, kind of like
Okay.
WaniKani. The same reason that people would like WaniKani, they would like Boon Pro. A little more engaging, and you have stats, so it makes you feel nice to see your level go up, and you get experience points. For the gamers.
Okay. So it's sort of, I feel like comparing it to Wanikani is not the greatest thing to do because our audience are going to be like, Wanikani, that's the devil. But point taken. It's fun. It's not painful like Anki.
Yeah, the thought of studying grammar in Anki makes me even more upset than the idea of reading. So
So it sounds like you do a lot of stuff as a coach, and it comes back to your personal stuff. So what has changed? Like, if you could sum up your Japanese journey from before you started coaching to now, what are some of the changes brought on by being a coach?
I guess before, comparatively speaking, I was I was a little more toxic. I was more in like the camp of, just get good, just immerse, bro. Um, but I realized when I started doing coaching that the audience is different. The people who come to coaching are in a different, I don't want to say bubble, but they're in a different category of the population. Um, People who are in Discord are definitely power users who are more inclined to figure things out on their own, spend the time to do it, invest the time, go read guides, and not really need much handholding. Um, but the people who are in coaching, they really seem to value their time and they value us helping them out instead of them having to have a headache for 5 days trying to find content. um, so seeing that not every language learner is a power user really opened my eyes.
Yeah, I've done a little bit of the coaching, and I can definitely say that clients run they run the what is it, the gamut? They're like some
The
are
gamut.
the gamut? Is it gamut?
Yeah, I mean, I've heard it
Okay.
pronounced that way.
They run the gamut. Some are like all borderline power users, and some cannot open a zip file. So you think that the coaching clients are just a different breed from the power users.
Yeah, I'm not saying either one is better. Like, I love my clients. Um, but it is definitely a different audience.
I think they
And
tend
it
to be
has
older. I think a lot of the
mm,
people in the community tend to be a little bit young.
it's opened my viewpoint. Being more understanding of people who struggle with things that I find simple.
So, if you had one piece of advice to give for people studying for the JLPT, what would it be?
Huh. For me,
Yeah. Do you now agree that you should do explicit study?
yes. Explicit study and tons of mock tests. But I feel like that is something that a lot of people will already come to the same conclusion about if they're going to be tackling JLPT.
All right. And I don't think you answered what is keeping you in 2C?
Uh, JLPT.
JLPT, prepping for JLPT.
Yeah. I guess I'm working on my reading now instead of going to stage 3 like I wanted. I guess that'll come later.
So, once you pass in one, what's next?
I want to do
Since
the
you're
stage 3 transition.
okay. And do you think you'll be able to pass in one without doing the stage 3 transition?
I mean, other people have done it, so maybe, probably.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
So, Vanessa, what has your biggest crisis of faith been since you started learning Japanese?
It's kind of a interesting question because a lot of people tend to go through that where they have a crisis at some point, whether it's at the beginning or a couple months in, a few months in, you know, years. But I mean, I feel like I haven't because I kind of just went in there from the start and not really caring about if it would work or not because there were a lot of clues throughout my life that immersion was the only way to learn a language because um, being me, being someone who spends a lot of time online, has had a lot of online friends. I don't like to go touch the grass, so I have a lot of online friends. And of course, I would have a lot of online friends in various parts of the world. And I had a couple of friends who were from Sweden, from Finland, places like that where they have very high English proficiency. And the common denominator between all of them seems to be that they had a lot of exposure to media in English. I would go as far as to say that Minecraft is responsible for teaching more people English than the entirety of public school combined and college. Um, because if you find something that really interests you, uh, the language being something you don't understand is not really an issue anymore if you want it bad enough.
And how would you go about convincing those who do not believe? So, one of the questions I got from the community was from a stage three Japanese learner who's also got quite good English, given that he's not from a country known for their English ability. He asked, how do you convince people to start immersing? So,
I
I know that
think
one of the rules we have is don't be a zealot.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I think for there's always going to be a section of people who are never going to do it, no matter what you do, no matter what evidence you show them, no matter what kinds of techniques you teach them. Like they're just not going to do it. But um, I think for me personally, the most convincing thing that made me take the plunge was seeing video evidence of other learners speaking the target language. And since my language is Japanese, being a weeb, I had a pretty good idea of what Japanese sounded like before I started learning. So I I think the kinds of learners that I watched, they're, me outputting after 2 years of AJAT kind of videos. Those were super convincing because it did not sound obviously foreign to me. And seeing other
But
people
isn't
who've
there
done it.
the fluency illusion that a lot of these
Yeah.
people on YouTube play off of?
Mhm.
You
Yeah.
can really only judge so much, right? Only to your ability.
Mhm. I think if you showed me someone speaking, I don't know, Norwegian, after a bunch of immersion versus someone who speaking it with a bunch of textbook time, I don't know if I'd be able to tell the difference, but maybe. With Japanese, I felt like I could.
But does that really answer the question of how you would get somebody to start immersing?
Show them video evidence.
Show
That's
them
my
video
answer.
evidence. Okay. And I think the person in question is proof in the pudding, right? He's quite good at English. You wouldn't
Mhm.
immediately guess, at least not over text, that he's
Mhm.
non-native.
Right.
So, shout out, by the way, you know who you are. You also translated a whole bunch of the guide into Portuguese for us.
Yes. Love him.
So, what's your biggest piece of advice to people who want to start the journey and become a language learner?
I think my biggest thing that I say all the time is to not overthink things. Stop overthinking, stop overanalyzing, stop I guess the word is catastrophizing, thinking about the worst case scenario all the time and like, "Oh my god, I'm going to spend all this time and get nowhere. I'll waste all this time just watching anime and not learn any of the language." That is impossible if you actually look things up and are at least partially invested in what you're doing. Like, it's impossible not to make progress.
You think progress is going to come as long as you show up every day, lace up your
I think
boots,
so.
and get in there. You'll make
Yeah.
progress.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think the interesting thing is I've seen people in the Refold community from day one all the way up to day bajillion thousand million. Some people have been at it for 18 plus years. Some people have just started. And Japanese or whatever language is not going to disappear. So it's there and then it'll be there 10 years from now.
Hmm.
And what would you say is the most surprising thing you've seen throughout the community or with like your coaching clients? Any sort of success stories? Anything sort of amazing you want to talk about?
Uh, I mean, it's hard to say one particular client or one particular person. Um, but I think the trend of seeing people's confidence really blossom, I guess would be a good word. Because a lot of times when I get clients who are still in the earlier phases of immersion, where they're still unsure of themselves and they're still like, oh my God, kanji, what do I do with kanji? And all those things, and watching things you don't understand, and not knowing what to do really, what kind of content to immerse in. And after like 4, 5, 6 weeks, I really see their confidence come once they start seeing results from what they're doing. Like, first week, it'll be like, "Oh, I was watching some anime, and maybe I recognized a couple of words in the whole episode, so that's nice." And then, a few weeks later, they're realizing that they're understanding whole sentences sometimes. And once they start seeing that, it really is kind of just not really in my hands anymore. They kind of just take it and run with it, which is really nice to see. It's really nice seeing someone go from no confidence to a lot of confidence.
And building off of that, do you see any frequent mistakes in like the community or with your clients? So you definitely watch the Japanese community like a hawk.
Hmm. I'm always watching. Um, yeah, in the community and also with clients. I think I was actually talking about this with someone else today. Um, where people keep themselves trapped in that preparatory phase where they're doing the Anki, they're doing the grammar, they're doing a textbook like Genki, and they're spending a couple hours doing that. And they don't actually ever get in there and do any kind of immersion because they're so scared. They're just scared of not understanding things, because when it comes to entertainment, you get so accustomed to just understanding everything and you take it for granted, to the idea of just sitting down and watching something that's complete gibberish is not appealing to a lot of people, and it's scary. So they stay in that preparatory phase, and I guess an analogy would be they never actually play a game. They'll sit there and read the rules for hours, but they never actually play a game.
That reminds me of Ben. Ben uses the example of
Yeah.
reading about how to play football, soccer, and then never actually playing soccer and expecting to be good.
Mhm.
So people they get hung up in this sort of preparatory stage and they don't start. So your advice is essentially rip the band-aid off, jump in there and get to it.
Yeah, I mean, the longer you put it off, the longer you're not gonna be good. The longer you're gonna suck. So you gotta get in there at some point. I was actually talking about this too earlier, where I feel like language learning is the only skill where people expect to show up day one and be good for some reason.
I
It
think it's
doesn't.
because everybody speaks the language already.
Right. Yeah.
You know, I see a lot of very strongly and wrong, but strongly opinionated people when it comes to language.
Mhm.
Um, all sorts of misconceptions about linguistics or how language as a whole functions. And I could, so many misconceptions. And I don't know if you get this too much with other fields or with other things because, like, does somebody go and argue with a chemist about chemistry?
Right. I can never I can't think of any other skill where people show up day one and expect to be good.
Well, not only do
It
they expect to be good, they come with all these preconceived notions.
Yeah. Mhm.
And I don't know. Maybe there are preconceived notions with other skills. I
Yeah.
don't know. But certainly
Um,
people tend to have a lot of them with language.
I did have a phase a few years ago of wanting to learn guitar, and I was bad at it, and I did not show up to guitar lessons thinking that I was gonna shred day one. I don't know, language learning is strange. Like you said, people have strange ideas about it.
Mhm. So, sort of, people need to temper their expectations.
Yeah, that is actually something I just thought of something. That is actually something I see is, people who come from a traditional mindset, they are conditioned by textbooks and apps to understand something instantly. Like, they give you a sentence in the language and they translate it for you right away. And people are just, they take it for granted and they expect to understand right away because of that. And they don't realize that before comprehension understanding, there's this whole other step that has to come before that. You have to recognize things first. You have to get to a point where things feel familiar. And then once you know that exists, then you can start actually comprehending and learning.
All right. And we are about at time for this episode. But before we go, do you have any parting advice, any parting words?
Stop overthinking things. Jump right in there. Don't worry about it. Time is going to pass no matter what you do. So you might as well watch some anime, learn some Japanese, and stop worrying about if it's going to work. Because it will. There's many people who it's worked for if you just look all over the internet.
All right. And thank you, Vanessa, for being on this episode of Meet the Team.
Thank you.
I want to thank you for listening to this episode of the Refold Podcast. If you're watching the live premiere, you're in luck. Right as it ends, we have an after party over on the Refold Central Discord server. Come join us by using refold.link/join and chat about the episode. If you enjoyed the podcast and would like to hear more, you can find older episodes to listen to on YouTube and Spotify. Let us know what you thought about the video by liking and leaving a comment below. Do you have suggestions for upcoming visitors or requests for particular topics? Please feel free to reach out to me on Discord at GeorgePig #5413 or via email at Clayton@refold.la. Thank you all for watching and or listening, and I'll see you next week.